Good morning, it's Kim Sullivan from Sixpenny Memories, and this morning I'm going to make a very quick notebook cover. So if you've got your ordinary, quite boring sometimes notebooks, but you want to make them really pretty and nice to pop in your bag, then this is a really quick way of doing it. Now, depending on the size of your notebook will depend on the size of your fabrics, but I'll give you a guide. This is an A5 one, and if your notebook is smaller, just make your dimensions a little bit smaller, and if it's bigger, of course you can make it bigger, but I'll show you what I mean. So for an A5 one, you're going to need an outer piece of fabric and a lining fabric, and these are going to be roughly 9.5 inches tall by 13.5 inches wide. You also need a piece of the Vlieseline H640, and I'll pop all of this in the instructions. And again, this needs to be 9.5 inches wide and 13.5 inches the other way. Okay, so that's your two pieces of fabric. The other thing that you need to hold the notebook in, so if I can show you this here, it's these flaps here. You need two pieces of fabric, and these for the A5 one need to be 9.5 inches tall. Now the width of those can just really depend on what you want. This isn't particularly wide. I'm not doing a particularly wide one here. This one, to give you some idea, is it's a 5-inch strip folded in half. But I did a particularly wide one here, just because I had the fabric and that's what I wanted to do. So with your two flaps, you're going to need two pieces of fabric. These ones are 9.5 inches by 5 inches, and then you'll need your Vlieseline H640, which is also 9.5 inches, but only 2.5 inches. The Vlieseline strip only needs to be half the width. Okay, so once you've got that, I'm going to take it to the overhead camera and I'm going to show you how we put it together, because it's very, very quick. So, has it gone to the overhead camera, she says? Oh no, hang on a second, I'll keep talking to you. Oops, a daisy, apologise about that. So apologise about that, we just had a little technical glitch, surprise, surprise. So we'll pop you over to here. So, once you're over here, you've got your outer fabric, which has got the H640 fused on already. Now the H640 needs to be fused on with a damp cloth and left for about 30 minutes. So this is one I've done already. And then you're going to need your two flaps. So again, fuse your H640 in again, and a damp cloth, leave it for 30 minutes. And then when you've done that, you can quite quickly trim off any of the excess H640 that's peeking out. So I'm just going to trim those off there now. Okay, once you've trimmed those off, we're going to lay them. That's not very trimmed very nicely, is it? You could use your rotary cutter or a sharp pair of scissors. I'm using the Prim pinking scissors for this. Okay, so you're going to pop it on there. It's a bit smaller, that one as well. What I'm going to do is I'll just trim this down, but we're going to pop these. Are these the same height? That's why, because I haven't got those the same height, silly girl. Yeah, they are. Take the excess off this one, and then I'll just trim this outer one down. Take two ticks to do that. So really, it could be whatever size you want, as long as it fits your notebooks. So we'll pop this one here and this one here, and you can see that my outer fabric is slightly too big. So what I'll do is I'll pop those on top of there like that, and we'll just do a quick trim. Not a problem at all. We'll grab the rotary cutter, which is there, and we'll just grab rotary cutter and ruler. Nothing's a problem. Oops. And trim that down so it's all the same size now. Okay, so once you've got that like that, you're going to pin it on in place. Move the ruler out the way. Pop some pins in, and then you're going to take it to the sewing machine, and you're going to increase your stitch length up to, I've increased mine to 4.5. If you have a sewing machine that has a basting stitch on, then use that. We're not use the lining, so we're just going to pin to the outer fabrics. So the fold is in the centre. Your fabrics are right sides together, like that, and you are we're going to baste along these two edges and down here, and I'll move you over to the machine camera, which is here. Yes, we're working. Having already increased the stitch length to a 4.5, I'm using the walking foot just because I've got quite a bit of thickness of fabric here, and thread wise I'm just using an Orifil 50 weight thread, and all I'm going to do is stitch very close to that edge. And if I pop this onto this particular machine, has a pivot on it, and then we're going to sew close to the edge along the two short sides, and this just allows us to remove the pins. So down there, across the top and along that edge. Haven't gone right to the edge, doesn't matter about that. And we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So this is just basting or tacking the 3 layers. Oh, that's the wrong way. 3 layers together. So you don't want to do the folded edge. You just want to do the raw edges. So stitch close to the edge. Now, by using a walking foot, it allows me to go through the thicknesses very, very quickly and easily. If you haven't got a walking foot, just use your standard universal foot, and just make sure that at all times your fabrics are lying nice and flat. So this is just a basting stitch along that layer, that way, and along there. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll take you back over to the overhead camera, and what we've done here is we have basted along these edges, the raw edges. And then the next little tip I'm going to give you is just take off at the corners, just with a nice sharp pair of scissors. I'm using the Prim pink scissors, which we have on the Sixpenny Memories website. Okay, so pop that there, and then you are going to place your lining fabric on the top. So the lining fabric is on the top, you've got your outer fabric, you've got your flaps, lining fabric, so it's all right sides together. And we're going to pop some pins in. I'm just going to pop a pin in to hold it and then flip it over, because I'm actually going to stitch from this side. Okay, so we'll pop a couple of pins in to hold, and what you want to make sure is that the flap is lying nice and flat. It doesn't matter if your lining fabric at this stage isn't exactly the right size, don't worry about that, because we can trim off, and we are going to be trimming off excess fabric in a few minutes. So once we've done that, now we are going to take it back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew around it again. So I'll take you back over to the machine. Now this time I'm going to decrease the stitch length, because remember my stitch length was at 4.5 before. I'm going to decrease the stitch length to 3. Now I do need to leave a gap in between, but I don't want to leave the gap over where the flap is. So I'll just bring it to about there. So in one of the top edges, I'm just going to do a forward stitch, a couple of reverse stitches, and this time using the guideline of the outer piece of fabric. I'm going to stitch, but have you noticed I've stitched off the edge, and I just think that this gives you a neater finish ultimately. So we're going to go down there now. Oops. So we're stitching around all 4 edges, but you're going to leave a gap in one of your long sides for turning through. So stitch down that short side, stitch off the edge. By stitching off the edge, it will give you a neater finish ultimately for your corners, because you've actually got quite a bit of bulk in those corners, and you'll see that when we turn it through. Now I can stitch all the way down this side, because I've left the gap in the other side. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a double pin in the areas that I've got to leave the gap, because sometimes I get excited and I forget about it. Okay, so we're nearly there. These notebook covers are so quick and easy to make. They make great gifts for friends, great for you know, if you're doing any fundraising, because you can buy a very cheap notebook. I mean, there's a shop where I live, and you can buy a notebook for £1. So just buy that notebook for £1, add in a stylish notebook cover. Yes, it's reusable. but it's also an ideal gift. Now here is where I'm leaving the gap, so I'm just going to do, I've passed my flap, so I'm just going to do a little reverse stitch, a little securing stitch there, and get rid of that. So I've stitched around all 3 sides, but I've left a gap for turning through, and it's not where the flap is. So I'll take you back over to the overhead camera, and when we're at the overhead camera, I want to talk to you about trimming the excess off. So I'm going to remove the pins that I had in. And you could do this with pinking scissors if you wanted to, or you can do it with your, if you've got a nice sharp pair of scissors. So once again, I'm taking the corners. I'm trimming quite close to that stitching line. Along there. This is the long edge that I didn't leave the gap in, so I can trim all the way along that edge. And this is where you really do need a sharp pair of scissors. These are the Prim Pink scissors that we have on the Sixpenny Memories website, and if you use the code SPM20CR you'll get a 20% discount. So this is the side, and this is taking away all of the bulk. Okay, now on this edge here, there's my gap here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim up to where I've finished stitching, which is there. I'm going to leave it, and then I'm going to go back to this part here. Okay, and what I've done effectively is, I'll just trim that thread there, get rid of those bits, is I've left the gap open and I've left everything in place. Now if I turn this over here, and if I fold down the 2 fabrics, you can see that's where your seam would be, and for a nice neat seam. So what I'm going to be able to do is just trim away the excess H640, the Vlieseline H640. You could use wadding, the Vlieseline Thermaline would work very well. I'm going to try it with the Decaville, which has a more of a leather-like appearance. So what I've done is I've taken away the excess wadding there, but I've left the fabric. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it through and get those corners through, and just take your time with this. If you leave a smaller gap, it takes a little bit longer. There's quite a bit of fabric to come through at this point, so just bear with. So we'll get that pulled through. The fabric I'm using is the Adidas Star Seamstress pack. We have a pack of 5 fabrics, which are 30 centimetres by 112 centimetres on our website, and they are lovely. They're called Seamstress. So we'll get these through, so we're nearly there, and turn that through there, get my finger in this hole. Now it looks rather odd at the moment. Now whatever you chose for your outer fabric, so on this occasion I've chosen the floral, we're going to fold the flaps towards the lining fabric. Okay, I just haven't quite got that in there, so just turn that. Sorry about, there's a dog barking outside. I've got the windows open because it's quite warm here today. So we'll just turn that through towards the lining fabric like that. That one's going towards the lining fabric like that. That one's going towards the lining fabric like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to poke your corners out. You're then going to be able to get a very neat finish here because we've already trimmed away the excess fabric. So just pop your seam in, and I like to hand sew these seams. Pop the seam in like that. Pop a couple of pins in to keep it in place. There you are. Give it a blooming good press, and there you are. You've got a very quick and easy notebook cover. So all you'll do then is grab your notebook, which is here. This is the one I made earlier. Haven't quite finished putting the seams in. Pop your notebook cover in, and you've gone from a boring notebook cover to a lovely one. So there you are. I've got 2 different sizes on this one. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, pop some comments on. You can pop over to the www.6six-penny.com website, and you can buy whatever you need. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will pop up some of the details of the, I'll not only pop on the details of the website, I'll pop on the details of the code as well. So use that code and you get 20% off. Thank you very much. Bye bye.